Welcome, dear audience, to This Week in Clown World, the video series dedicated to reliving the events of this simulation because yes, it really happened, and no, we weren't dreaming. Well, it's been a rather cold week over here in the Soviet Kingdom, as well the fallout of J.D. Vance's speech that made a full-grown adult cry because big scary American man wants freedom in Europe. Things only got dumber in a failed state and no one could afford the heating. Now, as many people are aware by now, and for any dirty foreigner who isn't, last year the Soycialist Labour Party won a stonking majority in an election, and it was this very election where everyone took one look at the Conservatory Party, who are meant to be right of centre, and then at the Labour Party, who are dirty commies, and decided, you know what? They are literally the same butt cheek with horrendous policies and make absolutely no economic sense. And then by magic, everyone who could be bothered to turn up on voting day voted only 34% for Labour, but then they got complete control of the parliament. Sounds kind of bad, right? Well, yeah, I mean, the Conservatories were doing a really good job at sinking us into the Atlantic, but somehow Labour found a few extra plug holes and now have sped the process up. And one thing that is really interesting about our new overlords was the fact that they prided themselves on being noble and scandal-free. Yes, the diarrhea bucket of sleaze and corruption is exclusively a Conservatory Party thing, and post-election, the adults were indeed back in the room. You know, Conservatory sleaze, like that whole did Boris Johnson eat cake at a party during lockdown? And then there was that guy who crashed his car and drove off without stopping, while apparently wearing women's clothing, and only after getting caught by the police did he come out as transgender, but never dressed like a woman in public and only wanted to be referred to as a male. What in the name of Clown Island was that all about? So with the really mature Labour Party in charge, it was going to be clear sailing, right? Everything will be totally fine. Wrong. As it turned out, some bloke called Lord Ali was buying Keir Starmer's missus thousands of pounds worth of clothing, and then the front bench all got Taylor Swift tickets for absolutely free, no doubt to peddle influence, and then an MP beat up a voter because his policies are terrible and couldn't take the criticism. Then the leader of the country called everyone who was pissed off at children getting London at a dance class far right, and then called everyone far right again because they were furious that children were gang raped by imported men and the government systematically covered it up. And then it turned out Stalin was breaking the very lockdown rules that he enthusiastically soy-jacked into law with the Conservatory Party with a speech therapist that he was no doubt banging. And then it turned out his very own Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel from Accounts, who's actually Rachel from Complaints, lied on her CV about being an economist and also a chess champion, which I still cannot get my head around. And then the Minister of Anti-Corruption had to straight up quit her job because she was getting investigated for, my God, corruption. And then a bunch of Labour MPs and councillors got suspended from the party because their WhatsApp group chat got leaked, where they hoped their own constituents died. But now we have the brand new scandal to add to the list that no doubt millions of people in 4 years' time will completely forget about and still vote Labour. Complete, utter toilet brains. Yes, it turns out the business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, the man who got together with Rachel from Accounts and circle jerked out the decline of British industry, put on his CV that he was a really cool solicitor doing solicitor jobs. Or a lawyer if you're a dirty foreigner. And he has been the best solicitor in the entire country for the entirety of history. But it turned out after an investigation that lasted for about 5 minutes, he never even qualified from the training program. Therefore, he was lying to bolster his career, and that actually broke the law because lying on your CV is false representation, which is a crime. And calling yourself a solicitor means you have to actually be one because you go on a register or something. So now that's getting investigated. Oh lordy, this country is a joke and all the toilet brains who voted for it must be feeling pretty embarrassed by now. I mean, what did anyone really expect? Labour have a history of being utter mongs in government, so why would they be any different now? And to make it even worse-lier, the Soviet Kingdom is in severe societal and economic decline, where even our hospitals are under attack by mass diversity gangs trying to serve a London longie to a 16-year-old after they had just stabbed him earlier that day. And then there's Rachel from Accounts, who is currently mulling over whether to wreck the ICE tax-free allowances for the peasants because earning a little bit of bob on interest is a hate crime in his country. And for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, currently in the Soviet Kingdom, you can save up to 20 grand a year in a special savings account, and any interest you earn is tax-free because paying taxes on money you've already earned is AIDS. Well, she's gonna make it only 4 grand. Yep. This is one of the dumbest policies yet, as her reasoning for ruining the last relief from this shithole of a country is that if they lower the tax thresholds on ISAs, then people would be more willing to invest in companies on the London Stock Exchange, therefore getting all that growth Rachel from accounts has been ringing over this entire time. Yeah, not gonna happen, mate, because when you're looking for companies to invest in, absolutely no one is looking at the UK right now. I mean, I have a number of investments myself, and only one of them is a UK company because they're an international manufacturer in a very niche market. But then came our next quest and spunking all the taxpayers' money up the wall with zero returns for the British people, or even a consultation on whether we wanted to do this. Yes, as the Orange Man is trying to bring an end to the Ukrainian-Russian war, which at any point over the past 3 years could have been negotiated and peacefully resolved, but instead we've just collectively plowed billions upon billions of dollars into the military-industrial complex and also politicians' hands through kickbacks. Well, Europe is getting big mad about all this peace for some reason, even though they've done nothing to resolve it. As a matter of fact, that giant twat Boris Johnson pleaded with Zelensky to get even more Ukrainians killed by prolonging the war, even though the peace negotiations were well underway in Turkey. And Russia, who was surrounding Kiev at the time, even retreated so the peace negotiations were in good faith. Yeah, you're not Winston Churchill, mate. You're a fat twat of a failed prime minister. Therefore, with the threat of peace rising on the continent once more and no longer can money be laundered through Ukraine, and BlackRock has already secured all the contracts to rebuild the country, it was up for Keir Starmer to put forward the greatest idea he has ever ideated in the history of ideaing. Hey, why don't we place British troops in Ukraine to enforce the resulting peace treaty? You know, protect Ukraine's border from the evil Russian potato man in case he comes back for round 2. Great, said the entirety of Britain. I bet Putin is really scared of a country of like an army of 12 people and even the nukes don't work. Get real, you twat. The British army has become an international joke thanks to piss-poor weak governments consistently defunding them. And also deindustrializing the country, so even if we did go to war, we couldn't even make our own bullets. This is how bad it is in the British forces right now. RAF fighter pilots are no longer judged on whether or not they can fly the fucking plane, but instead on whether they're a professional victim because for some reason white man bad. While at the same time we have foreign rapists being handed out golden tickets to remain in this country, and also an entire invasion force currently clogging up our hotels because, and you'll never believe this audience, they got into the country for a completely unprotected open border. How are you gonna protect Ukraine if you can't protect your own country, you fucking idiot? I'm pretty sure it's getting to the point here now that if another country invaded us, the first question the indigenous population would ask is what is their tax policy and do they deport foreign nonces? And if the answers are favourable, I don't think people would really mind too much. Take for example the Syrian boatman who entered his country illegally, then somehow got a car when he couldn't even speak any English. Then, as is his tradition, went out hunting women to grape at night. And after he was caught trying to kidnap one and consequently arrested, during the court trial where the taxpayers had to pay for a translation service, it turned out he may not even end up spending any time in jail because, let me check my notes, he has PTSD from the time when he was in Syrian jail. And just when you think this couldn't get any dumber, it turns out he also has a wife, and if he was to be sentenced, it might have a detrimental effect on him. What? Meanwhile, we have balding men with full beards being treated as children because somehow unknown to anyone, a judge ruled that he most certainly was a child because we don't do age checks anymore. Or you could not make it up. One of my favorite stories is from 2018 when an illegal immigrant came here with a beard and it was also a child, so they put him in a high school and all the pupils were like, what the fuck is going on here? And then sent pictures all around the place saying, This guy is an adult. And then it turned out he was 30 years old. You couldn't make it up. But during the most clownliest of times, there is also that glimmer of hope upon the horizon, because out came Kemi Badenoch, the new leader of the Conservatory Party, as after they got destroyed in the last election, Sunak straight up quit his job. And she dropped her big feminine balls on the table and set the record straight. So under my party, we imported more rapists and murderers than any other government in history. And we also made sure that once they invaded these lands, we gave them the right to remain here, and also a chest full of hard-working British taxpayer money. Yeah, so after 6 months of soul searching, having lost the last election by a blowout, I have decided mass immigration is wrong, and it has caused serious damage to not only the culture, but also the economic structure too. But please don't remember we were in power for 14 years and we totally did this to you. Oh, poor Kemi Badenoch. She's trying so hard. Yeah, we do all realise she's only saying all this because she's getting her ass kicked by the Reform Party, right? But while the Soviet kingdom collapses in on itself through purposeful self-harm that for some reason the general population keep voting for, over in Austria we had yet another spontaneous episode of Diversity is Our Strength. Now, having immigration controls is quite easy. You ask a foreign man from distant lands, how are they going to contribute to your society? And if that answer is, yeah, I'm an aerospace engineer with 3 doctorates and none of them are in international gender studies, you say, wow, that's actually pretty damn cool. Please come in. Just respect our women. But if they have absolutely nothing to offer and instead their only profession is a professional donkey walker, then they ain't getting that green card. But sadly, we live in the weak men phase of the cycle, so little Syrian Ahmed, the lover of ISIS, decided to bring cultural enrichment to Austria, and now a 14-year-old boy is dead. Oh yeah, JD Vance is the bad guy for his speech telling everyone that they need to secure their borders because shit like this keeps happening. It definitely isn't the politicians who purposefully put the entire continent into danger to fulfill a pseudo-intellectual philosophy that all cultures are the exact same thing, so importing half the third world without any vetting measures wouldn't result in terror cells. And while the people of the continent suffers the consequences of mass unvetted immigration from third world countries that was intentionally put upon us, we got to know a little bit more about the German government and how they pretend they're most certainly not like the 1940s Germany men, while acting just like they did, but only this time the oppression class is different, and they replace guns with morning police raids. So after the complete fallout of the JD Vance nuke drop on soy-infested Europe, CBS 60 Minutes decided that they would take a peacetime trip to Germany because of reasons, and then got the German government to lay on its back so they could play a good old game of Red Rocket. Hi, is it true you put people who are mean on the internet in prison for hurty words? Yes, especially those who say hurty words against us, the government. In Germany, to have freedom and democracy, and also across Europe, we must ensure that everyone who disagrees with our policies go to jail. The system works and everyone is entirely satisfied with the terrorist attacks because we haven't heard any criticism for a while now. Oh, that's so cool. Policing people's speech is exactly what we want as well. You know, in 2025, with the full knowledge of history, where we had the Soviet Union, Maoist China, Cuba, Vietnam, Cambodia, Iran, Afghanistan, Venezuela, and most importantly, we all know what happened in 1940s Germany. It is utterly disgusting where I'm from. You would not believe the pain and suffering being able to speak your mind and criticizing everybody without any government interference causes. Especially on the internet, where you can quite literally just log off at any time and also ignore people. So upon the airing of that episode of 60 Minutes, and everyone in America were like, what the fuck is wrong with Europe? How have they soy-jacked themselves to this level of oppression? CBS decided they were having an interview with Marco Rubio, where they wanked out the most intellectual bombshell that, in my professional opinion, is the dumbest take I have ever heard in my entire life, and I fear I am not even exaggerating here. Yeah, so that JD Vance speech, that was really bad, innit? But did you know that back in the 1930s, that 1940s Germany man used free speech to commit mass genocide? Being able to speak your mind is the downfall of the Western world. What the fuck is wrong with these toilet brains? I mean, you would have thought that after the Orange Man had a blowout election win, and also the diarrhea level ratings the fake media are getting these days, they would consider that maybe, just maybe, they are actually the retards here and no one is listening to them anymore. I mean, come on, how bad is to take that Hitler rose to power because he had free speech? Alright, quick check-in with the poor little celebrities who still think they're relevant even though all of their cry wanking that the orange man is bad still lost them the election and no one cares. When it turns out narcissism is one hell of a drug and when you're in a dying industry of your own making, it's probably best just to shut your little fucking mouth up and lay off the political lectures. I mean, if these guys weren't actors, they would probably be working in a call center as a customer complaints handler, as their talent is a professional pretender, just like Rachel from Accounts, the UK Chancellor. Yes, insert David Tennant, the man with a whole load of trans children who definitely came up with that idea completely on their own, with no external predatory forces implanting ideology into their heads that makes them want to do physical, irreversible harms to themselves. So he stood at the BAFTAs, which for all you dirty foreigners is the British Film Awards, and proceeded to give it both barrels. Donald Trump is a villainous child who watches Nickelodeon because he has really big dum-dum brain. He's a really mean racist too, and a transphobe. I am using my voice as a professional faker to make a difference in this world. Yeah, you're really not, mate. No one cares. It's actually embarrassing now. Then came the next attack that these washed out pretenders cry wank to the masses who just aren't listening anymore. Tom Hanks, the man who's definitely shitting himself about now over the Epstein files being released. You know, because of all the rumors. Hi, I'm a MAGA supporting racist stereotype with a low IQ because lordy, wanting border protection and government audits is a terrible thing. Well, they've had about 8 years now to come up with a different joke and all they could do is the exact same attack lines that saw the orange man win absolute power. Enjoy the next 4 years and I hope it's not in jail, although that would be in sweet justice. Then came the next embarrassment. Stephen Ree King, the author who wrote some pretty good books, but also a child orgy in It that for some reason no one checks his C drive over, even though that was some of the most nonce shit I've ever read in my life. Well, if anyone can be bothered to remember, he dropped his latte and straight up quit X because people were roasting him for his absolute terrible takes. And for months upon months, absolutely no one cared that he was gone, but my god, he's back again, and still no one cares. You just couldn't put down the narcissism for 1 minute, could ya? And finally, we come to the soy crybaby in chief, Mr. Mark Hamill, who somehow appointed himself a moral authority on what is good and bad in the world because he once waved a lightsaber back in the 70s. Well, as he was having a big old cry and reeing softly into the microphone, his trousers fell down and everyone laughed because he's a clown. Alright then, background reeing over, let's go heading over to Canada because once again DEI is the dumbest idea the West has ever had, and then a plane fell over. Well, it turns out when you prioritize bingo cards of oppression over cold hard meritocracy, you end up doing that little thing called fucking up for everyone, and in this case fucking up quite bigly. Now, I have played Microsoft Flight Simulator, and at no point have I ever managed to roll the bloody plane on landing. I may have crashed into a couple of buildings and killed some geese, but rolling it? Get the fuck out of here, I ain't no amateur. Here though, they managed to pull that off somehow after years upon years of training, compared to a guy with a joystick in his bedroom. And the most bestly part of this is that no one learned a single lesson from all the other screw-ups, as Delta Airlines just before the roly-poly reaffirmed that DEI is all about hiring people based on race cards and whether or not they've got an innie or an outie. Then they pretended it's all about securing the highest talent. Yeah, you really can't have both. Meritocracy seriously doesn't work that way, you idiots. But my favourable part of all this was old Chucky Schumer, the reptile-in-chief, blaming Trump for it when the crash occurred in Canada. Hey, look over there, even NBC tried getting in on it too. Get the fuck out of here, you dumbasses, no one cares anymore. Big shout out to all my Patreon boys and guys. Every night I dream of us walking hand in hand on a beach while committing grotesque hate crimes. Love you all very much, Lee.
Subscribe button.
Is always right.